window open as well, right, should I?
Okay, go back to mute.
1 minute until showtime.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into a pre-Computer America show. We've got a great program planned for you tonight. In the second hour, we're going to have Computer and Technology News brought to you by Slimware Utilities. And in the first hour, we have the professor and chair of the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at the Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany. Dr. Patrick Bodisch is here with us tonight. So it's going to be talking about using 3D printers and hacking into them and laser cutters. It's just amazing technology and things that they're doing over there. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show as we start our Tuesday edition of the Computer America program.
Yeah, what he said.
5 seconds.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live, it's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America, hosted by national columnist Craig Grossman. For Craig's weekly column newspaper, this show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and your phone calls. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello, and welcome into the Computer America show. It's the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. Computer America is heard around the world and coast to coast. And I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Computer America show. Again, we have a really outstanding program planned for you. What is this? What is this month? What is the theme for this month, Ben? It's our educational. What is it?
Oh, really? Craig, you run the show. You should know what's going on here. The theme for this month is For Science.
For Science. There it is. That's our underlying theme. And boy, do we have some science planned for you tonight on this program. Of course, in the second hour, we're going to have Computer and Technology News brought to you by Slimware Utilities. They are the official optimization software of Computer America. Get some very interesting stories coming up there as well. It's been an interesting day today. We did a couple of firsts today. We actually did our first pre-show broadcast, a recording session.
There you go. Yeah, because it can't really be a pre-show.
Yes, and hopefully this will prevent individuals like our current guest, who is in Potsdam, Germany. They won't have to be in the wee hours. We can actually schedule a normal recording session, and then we can actually play that session back when we go live. So, and it was very successful. We did it with our guest for tomorrow, which is Intel, and we did it, and it worked out swimmingly well. So we're very pleased with that. So let me just mention real quick, if you have a comment or question for our guest, you can give us a call at 347-884-8881. We'll get you on and get you through. 347-884-8881. Email is live, L-I-V-E, at computeramerica.com. If you're radio shy, you don't want to go on the air, that's a great way to contact us. You can also join us in our live Computer America video chat room. Now, the way you do that is you go to our homepage at computeramerica.com, just click on the chat room /live video page. What will happen is the live Computer America video stream will start up automatically. You don't have to do anything, and you'll be able to not only listen to the show, but you can actually watch the Computer America show. And on the left-hand side is our chat room. You just put in, the form for that is right there. You just put in the information like a username. That's the name you'll be known by when you go in there. And click the connect button, and your browser will move you into the chat room. A lot of people are in there. Would love to see you in the Computer America chat room. Okay, that said, as I said, it's Science Month, and we have a science guest for you tonight. Our guest in this segment believes that computer science and mechanical engineering are about to unite. In the future, users will solve mechanical problems by digitizing the involved objects using 3D scanners, solving the problem in the digital domain using the means of computer science, and converting the result back to the mechanical domain using a 3D printer. According to my guest, this will allow solving mechanical problems with the effectiveness and efficiency of computer science, including the ability to scale massively. Now, joining us tonight is Dr. Patrick Bodish, who is the professor and chair of the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany. Patrick, welcome into the Computer America Show, sir. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And I'm sorry, I assume you're in Potsdam. It looks like it's really early in the morning there. So.
That's right. Yeah, it's a little after 3 right now.
Well, see, we're night people, so we actually we embrace the night, but we get to sleep late because of that. But
yeah, not everyone enjoys being up 3 a.m. on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I thank you for taking the time to be here with us. So you heard my introduction, and I just want to go a little bit now. I hear you and your lab are hacking 3D printers and laser cutters. Now, tell me more about these machines and what you make for them. Okay, can you, in your own words, please?
Absolutely. So the concept itself of these machines has been around for a couple of decades. And in many ways, I think from a consumer perspective, we didn't really notice these machines for a long time. So the idea basically is it's a very simple machine, which is a little glue gun, if you will, mounted to a robot arm. And so on a computer program, you can move that robot arm around, and it drops a little bit of glue along the way, and that builds up a 3D object. Very similarly, you can put something else at the end of this machine. You could put a little laser there and it will cut something, or you could put a kind of a drill bit there, and that will give you a milling machine. So these machines have been used for a very, very long time in industry. And then a very few years ago, the patents ran out on this. And what happened as a result is that there was a crazy uptake by the maker community. People started making these machines at price points very, very low. Initially, so for example, one of the first machines that we acquired at the lab cost around $50,000. In the process of a very brief amount of time, they dropped to something like $3,000, which is crazy, right? That's a factor of 15. And then the latest one we bought was actually one that we assembled ourselves for $300. So at this point,
I wouldn't have been the one who spent $50,000 on the printer only to find out a couple of months later it was selling for $300. I would be a little miffed.
Well, we talk about how things go the way computer science goes. That's kind of the normal thing, right? With computers, we're very used to the idea that something that was very expensive, very recently actually can get very cheap. So what's happening right now is that more of these kind of patents kind of end their lifespan, 25 years, and the technology and the ideas become accessible to a broad audience. And so we started seeing an explosion of these new models. So there are some websites, for example, makers share these ideas, how they make them. And the last time I checked, there were about 200 different models. It seems like everyone who enjoys using these machines, the first thing they do is to kind of design and make a new 3D printer, for example. So a lot of these things are kind of self-replicating. So one of the early projects was called RepRec, because something that replicates itself. So in my research with my lab and my students here in Potsdam at Hasso Plattner Institute, we use this technology to kind of fabricate objects and to generate interactive systems out of them. So traditionally, the way of using these systems is very similar to how we used to use computers in the 50s and 60s, when people, put a stack of punch cards into the computer, went away for like a couple of hours, to then later hear something like error in line 25, please redo everything. So it's still a very slow process. And we think that in the future we're going to work with these machines very much like the evolution of computers has shown, that we're going to interact with these directly in a very fast way. So rather than like sending off some sort of a process that will take a couple of hours to process as it does today, that we're going to use these machines more as we're interacting with a touchscreen, for example.
Well, now, so basically you're taking different technologies and kind of combining them together. And what's the big picture here? I mean, what is it what do you hope to accomplish with this?
So I think what you said in the introduction is a very good kind of abstract view of this. I think so. Think, for example, today, if you're losing your key at home, okay, so you want to make a spare key, and you're taking it into a shop, and they're going to make a copy of that key, okay.
Uh-huh.
So they're using a highly specialized machine. Maybe you've kind of observed how that works. You have it's a machine. You take a blank key, and you have the key that you still have, and you stick both of them into the machine. And now what the machine does, it kind of there's a little mill in there, like a little drill bit, if you will, that kind of carves into the blank key, and at the same time mechanically reads the key that you have.
Right.
And so, obviously the process works reasonably well. It takes a little bit of time, and the machine is highly specialized for doing that. Now, in the future, that's going to change, and with the process right now, in the sense that you're using an abstract machine to scan the key, and you're using something like a 3D printer or a milling machine to make the key. Now, what's interesting about that process, if you just look at it from a distance, it looks like the same process. But in reality, what happened now, you've also created a digital key, right? So there's some sort of a scanned copy of your key right after you scanned it, right before you kind of cut the new key. And that key actually can be shared, for example. So if you want to send this to some friends, you could do that, and they could fabricate a key to your apartment when they need to. And but this key itself could now be shared 1,000,000 times, for example. You could upload it to BitTorrent, and everyone in the world would have access to your apartment, which is probably not what you want.
I don't know if that's something I would want, though. Open up my apartment to everybody. A key is supposed to be
exactly.
So
what's interesting?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this process now is that because of this digital key in existence, a lot of process changes. So one of the things that happened, for example, is if you look at the car industry, they're using that process to their advantage. So for example, let's imagine you own like a 1970s VW, and a piece of the bumper breaks. It's a tremendous nightmare for the company and for you as well, because you want to buy a new bumper cap now. What's going to happen is you're going to order this, and they're going to have one storage unit somewhere on the planet where they keep that part from you from 1974. They're going to charge you an arm and a leg for it, and it's going to take quite a while to get to you. And then when they run out, they have to refabricate. It's a very, very expensive process. In the future, they're going to use exactly this model of the digital key to use these things, and some of them have started to do that. So what happens is, rather than actually going to some storage unit and finding that piece for you, they're going to bring up the digital model that they've made a while ago of that piece. They're going to fabricate it for you just in time and ship it to you. In some slightly more advanced version of the future, they're going to send it to a fabrication machine very close to you. And in some really idealized future, they're going to send it to you. And while you're like lying under your car and repairing it, you realize that you need that part. They're going to mail it to you. It's going to fabricate on your own 3D printer in the next couple of minutes, and you don't even get out of it from under the car, and you kind of put the part in there right away. That would be a very fast way of doing it, and it's certainly very beneficial for the company, because they don't have that situation anymore that they have to maintain these parts. So I think that's one of these things where like you can see that a workflow that is very common in physical mechanical parts gets replaced by a workflow that you're very familiar with from things like the iTunes Store. Right? iTunes does not go, like Apple does not go out and record a disc for you when you're asking for an MP3. They have that in store and mail it to you, or you can download it when you need it. So that, I think, is going to be a tremendous change.
That is a sort of, I mean, I can imagine, even if you're an automobile dealer, you have all this additional, you're keeping all these spare parts in inventory, and even then, sometimes you just don't have it, and they have to call out. But if you go to an automobile dealer who has this equipment installed, and then he can print the part out for you without having the cost of storage and all the, I mean, certainly.
Whoa, let me stop you right there. It's the dealer. They're going to charge you an arm and a leg regardless. But
well,
it's nice to know that. I guess this kind of technology is going to change it from, kind of producing things and, kind of thinking, okay, well, we're going to make 10,000 of them because that's what we feel the demand is. Now you're turning it into on demand. Whenever the person needs it, you can make it cheaply and efficiently right then, instead of just kind of saying, here's what we think it's going to be and here's what we budgeted for.
Absolutely.
It's going to change the world of inventory control. literally. So you don't have to maintain large quantities of inventory. You can just print out the items you need when you need them.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this kind of thing before, and obviously you're doing research, so you have, much more advanced technology. But we have a correspondent called Charles Tindall, and he works on, antique cars all the time, and he's actually called out for 3D printed pieces that, let's face it, they don't make them anymore, but you can scan it, and people are 3D printing them. Uh, how are people going to get, like you mentioned that you could just scan the key and then you have a digital copy of the key. Uh, like I thought that was a pretty complicated thing that a lot of people don't have access to or can't do, and I know they don't at the moment, but will they in the future have ways to kind of scan items or kind of upload information to make the 3D parts, or are we just going to have to go to, let's say, an iTunes to get pre-planned parts?
So that's exactly, I think, the interesting evolution right now. So if you look back at at other things that changed that way, I remember watching an interview with the inventor of the digital camera, and he said, when digital photography started out, he didn't see all the different, people asked him, what would it be like in the future? What is the digital photo album going to look like? And at the time he was talking about a camera that was the size of a TV set and recorded photographs on tape. And then he said, many people invent along with you, and that's exactly what happens in 3D printing right now. So in terms of scanning, for example, you see interesting solution from Microsoft, for example, the Microsoft Kinect camera, which shipped as part of the entertainment system, Xbox One, is actually a scanning solution, and new software actually allows you to move that 3D camera around a piece and generate a 3D model. That only works for objects the size of something like a human. Then the Tango phone actually shipped from Google actually contains a smaller version of that camera. And so you're seeing more and more parts popping up that allow you kind of to generate these things that kind of are not initially part of the maker movement, but kind of perpendicular to that. So yes, I think everyone's going to have this technology at hand, especially for scanning. The prices are dropping just even faster than for 3D printing. And I think we're going to see 3D printers in the home. And that's actually what's happening right now. They're not actually picked up by consumer at this point. We have this kind of intermediate stage where makers, kind of people enjoy making things, kind of get access to this technology. But we certainly see an exponential growth of the number of installs on these machines.
Well, isn't the materials that these printers are using really a major part of the problem? I mean, as you know, some parts on a car are, of course, plastic, but some parts on the car are metal, or leather, or something different, so. Isn't that has to factor into the equation here? What is it you're printing and what's it made of? Would it not be?
Absolutely, yeah. So there are a couple of interesting ideas to that, and some of these things are working on in our lab. So if you would like like for the piece of the bumpers, the existing plastic may be acceptable. You might have something else. I think what you see now is more and more materials showing up. So again, like in the maker scene, you see like kind of a new material, like once a week essentially. You see elastic materials. People start to. There's certainly ways now of printing with fused metal in there, which is very interesting. It's a very sturdy material that comes out of that. People have experimented with glass as well. Conductive materials are happening right now, so you can envision a machine that not just contains mechanical parts, but also starts containing some sort of a circuit board. So you could kind of start printing the electronics along with it. So the evolution there is insanely fast at this point right now. But the idea that you're actually making a machine, that actually has its own sensing capabilities, maybe adding a motor to that. People are debating producing the motor as well in the future. I think that's very, very interesting because in some ways you're using equipment as you're used to, like a computer system, but what you're creating with it is its own like living thing to a certain extent, machine, compared to like what we used to fabricate, which is essentially just replications of data. Like if I print a piece of paper, it doesn't have the same functionality as a machine that it produces with that. So I think that's exactly one of the key points right now. You see how the things that people fabricate are getting more and more complex and interesting, and multi-material printing is part of that. So you see some of these printers actually have a whole set of cartridges from different materials that you use.
Now, you mentioned something called metamaterials. What do you mean by metamaterials?
So I think ultimately, if you think like 50 years into the future, you want these machines to be able to make anything you want, right? So, you know, maybe I would like them to produce this headset I'm wearing right now. I think there's something in between. So today, a lot of these early things just are primarily concerned with the shape of the overall object. And ultimately, I think we're going to have, you know, with materials, access to kind of some sort of molecular structure. And metamaterial is the idea that you're organizing the material, like the size layer in between, in different ways. So, for example, so you can envision how you're organizing a material in a way that makes it very elastic, but putting it interesting like spaces in between. The same material with the same kind of basic plastic material or whatever it is could behave very differently if organized differently. So the term metamaterials is a very promising term because it suggests that without actually making any changes to the machine actually is happy to organize your material however you want. You know, it's spending on a certain print. It's going to spend 1 hour to produce it, independent of how exactly the printer arranges the material. You could change the structure, change the elasticity, stiffness, and you can do that on a kind of local basis. So you can have very little bits that are different from others. So one of the things we're working on right now, for example, is a neck brace. And you can envision how, like, rather than having some sort of a cast-like thing that's the same for everyone, maybe minimally adapted, you could actually produce one that perfectly fits your body, has exactly the right parts being elastic and the right things giving you mechanical support. And the way this works is that on that individual parts of it are designed to be elastic. So you can think of it, rather than printing just solid material, you have little cells. Each of these little cells is designed to fulfill a certain specification, but then the neighbor cell can already be different. And so the whole volume, you can envision like thousands, if not millions, of little cells all being different, kind of contributing to an overall material behavior.
You know, so
hey, Greg, you know what that means, right?
What?
One day in the future, you could be able to print your own Crocs instead of having to go embarrass yourself in public.
I think that's exactly what's happening.
You know, he has to take a dig. You know, it's funny because what you're describing is materials that can change their physical characteristics, and make something that's hard or something that's soft or something that's elastic, and it's all basically the same material. I mean, you mentioned.
And I really like how you tied into to medical devices and things like that, because we know people that have to use neck braces, and at the end of the day, it's made of memory foam, and it's kind of everyone has a chin and everyone has the back of the head, but other than that, it's not really customized for the person using it. It's just foam. And and that goes doubly for maybe shoe inserts for people who have collapsed arches, and just every little thing that you can think about that's we kind of take for granted as, okay, well, you have 12 options in the drugstore. I guess someday you'll have everything customized to you.
I think that's exactly the key element of the vision today, right? And I think that's actually kind of what got a lot of the kind of maker movement started, was the desire to make things for yourself and to get exactly as you would like to have it. So I mentioned the thing with the car parts. That's kind of the first step, because the idea of fabrication machines like that comes out of industry. As the makers are picking it up, people start to customize, and I think that's one of the key benefits. You can envision how people in different parts of the world will make things differently. And I think if you extrapolate, I think what I'm excited about is the next stage of that, which is when people will not just kind of download and maybe adapt a little bit, but when a large number of people actually starts to get involved in making things and designing things. And I think, so again, if we look at a historical analogy, if you look at personal computing, it started in industry, right? I mean, well, it started in universities in many ways, but I mean, it certainly was only professional users for a very long time. And then sometime, you could pick the 70s for that purpose. You could say people started tinkering, And and at some point, I think a larger number of people got access to these and started developing along, which was a huge boost in the ability of the field to evolve. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing right now when more people get access to this technology. And so in our lab, we're kind of looking at software we can give these people to help them do that. So if you think about what computer systems typically do, it's almost like a recipe. You have some sort of a smart system that helps you bridge the things you don't really know. So for example, the three of us, we could design a poster for Computer America. And the reason why we can do that, we would have been kind of unable to do that at this professional level, like had we used pre-computer systems. But today we're going to use some software like maybe Adobe Illustrator or something like that, and maybe we're going to use a template that already shows us a little bit where things are going. So even though we may not know all that much about how to design a poster, we could actually do a reasonably good job because the computer eliminates the need to have physical skill, like the font is going to look perfect because it's going to be produced by the computer.
Right.
Different from like what the three of us might make if we just pick up like a Sharpie. And the second thing is the computer might have some domain knowledge that tells us, Craig and Patrick, I like your 17 fonts there, but maybe you want to keep it down a little bit, and here's some hints on like how to make a beautiful poster. And I think this is one of the beautiful parts of the computer system, that some of the domain knowledge can also be embedded in the system. So what you see today, I just gave a keynote in Tokyo, and was visiting the lab of a friend of mine. They're having some really interesting systems that help. I like one. There's one I really like. It's very cute. It allows people to make model airplanes that actually fly. And so I think all of us can make a model airplane as long as we stick to like a standard one that we learned as a kid somehow. But if you want to make one that actually has a custom shape, maybe you take the Computer America logo and you want to make that into a model airplane, and it's very difficult to make it fly afterwards. So they made a little system that actually has the domain knowledge of how to make stuff fly. So you make it look like the Computer America logo, and then it's not going to fly. Then you hit a button that says, help me make this fly, and then the system says, maybe you want to move the wings a little backwards and add like a little coin here on the front to kind of add some weight and so on. And at the end of the day, meaning 10 minutes later, the thing actually can be fabricated and will fly. And I think that's an insanely interesting construction. So if you think of this as happening to the field of mechanical fabrication as a whole, then the presence of having a machine that fabricates for me not just eliminates the need for me to mechanically produce that plane anymore, but it also helps me overcome some of the most critical hurdles. And so, if you just follow my airplane, that now like 1,000 or maybe 1 million people make new airplanes, but they could also be working on much more complex problems assisted by a computer, the same way that desktop publishing, video editing, finite element simulation, you name it, anything, studio recordings, all these things that people would have been unable to do in the 50s, 60s, started to become able to do in the 80s or 90s, or whenever the respective kind of revolution happened. Now we see that happening from mechanical machines. These machines, together with new software that developed in research, will enable a large number of people to actually not just print their own machines or print their own parts, but actually to design machines to solve problems at hand, which I think is insanely promising.
Wow, it can be, yeah. I mean, but we're still on at the very, very beginning part of this. I mean, we still have a long way to go. Before we really see this. We've had a number of 3D printer companies on the show, and we've had videos of them demonstrating, and it's amazing. The prices have come down. But when you always ask them, you say, well, what is it you're using to print? Well, they have this like fishing wire line that they can do, but it's very limited to on the materials that it's using. I mean,
at least on the consumer side, of course.
Yeah, exactly. But if you, I guess, on the manufacturing side, are we seeing anything of this now beginning to appear in manufacturing? Are they using any of this technology at this point, or is it still all pretty much in the lab?
So I think the technology itself is massively used in the industry. Since you mentioned the technology, so there's actually another technology that's slightly different, but in a very interesting way that allows for more materials. It's called laser sintering. Also, on that one, the patents are running out in very, very shortly, and so they will also make it into the basements of makers and into the homes very soon. The way it works here is rather than having the little glue gun go around and fabricate material, the machine lays down an entire layer of material, and then, for example, a laser comes around and hardens some of that material, and the whole thing moves down a little bit and repeats. And so initially, while the thing is fabricated, you don't see anything. So if you use plaster, for example, it could use some sort of a metal-infused kind of resin. All you see is like a box full of that stuff. But then you reach in, and inside is the object you were looking for, because it's the only part that's solidified, but everything else remains in powder form. That process is...
That is really interesting. Listen, Patrick, we're up against the our bottom of the hour break, so we're going to take a little break, and then we'll come back and continue on. We are talking to Dr. Patrick Bodish, who is the professor and chair of the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at the Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany. You'll listen to the Computer America Show on the Blog Talk Radio Network, on the Boost Radio Network, on the IRN Radio Network. We'll be right back with Patrick and more on this subject right after these words. Stay with us.
Hey everyone, have you heard about the No hair removal device that's sweeping the globe? If you want to go weeks without shaving and get smooth, professional quality results, here's our favorite host, Cheryl, for No hair removal.
Thanks. Hey gals, I love talking about my No. It's this cute little hair removal system that you can take with you and use almost anywhere at home or on the road. No more expensive in-office treatments, painful waxing, and no more wasting your valuable time. Got unwanted facial hair? No has patented thermocon technology that works on all hair and skin colors, so it's perfect for using on all body parts. And now you can take advantage of this incredible risk-free trial. Get the No, the facial kit, a travel case, and a $100 discount shopping card, and you don't risk a penny to try it. Try the incredible No hair completely risk-free. Call 1-800-953-5415. That's 800-953-5415. 800-953-5415.
Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they're available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com.
Okay, let's get you out of your rut. This is Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America, this time Irwin Curved Jaw Vice Grips. Their full name, Irwin Fast Release Vice Grip Curved Jaw Locking Pliers, leaves us with only a few things to talk about for this review. The tool is 10 inches long. Its curved jaws are a plus when gripping pipe or conduit up to 48 millimeters in diameter. You can release it with one hand because there's no release trigger to squeeze. The front gripping lips are about ½ an inch wide and ¼ inch deep for a firm hold on smaller items, and the pressure adjustment is knurled for easy field modification. Bottom line, Irwin Fast Release Vice Grip Curved Jaw Locking Pliers add a great grip on pipe or conduit, plus some handling improvements to a tool family we've long found dependable. This is Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show, and Marty Winston there with a News Tips Bulletin Review. Not in a rut, but we should say Happy St. Patty's Day, everyone. That was tonight, so hopefully you are enjoying the Computer America Show. Hopefully a little bit less inebriated, or a little bit more inebriated than usual, but you know, have fun out there. But right now we are talking to Dr. Patrick about us here, and we are discussing 3D printers and things like that. And right before the break, we kind of had to cut you off. Was there anything more you had to say on that subject before we move on?
For some reason, he's muted. And
Nope.
I don't,
Okay, yes, I should be here right now. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep. We're good.
Yeah, we were talking about a kind of more recent type of printing that actually is able to produce more materials and actually more expressive forms as well. So we're going to see more ability of people to kind of mix materials, and that's going to come to the home as well. At the same time, the question was in how far do some of these things feed back into industry? And I think actually certainly industry has used these technologies for a while. I think they will continue to use them. They're an invaluable addition to the prototyping process. So for example, if you're designing like for example a grip of a tool, people have been using these kind of personal fabrication tools for quite a while. I think the bigger revolution is going to happen when a large number of people, like the listeners to the show, will get access to these machines. They can do so right now by just kind of going online and going to different maker sites and just downloading a model. They can order some kits that are kind of starting the few $100s range. They're still kind of hard to use in a way. I mean, when it comes to like fixing issues, it feels a bit like regular printing in the 80s when you had paper jams like once a day. That's essentially what you see with these machines nowadays. But I think you can watch exactly the same evolution as these machines get more reliable and faster, and as more things can be done. An interesting point to start, for example, is a site called Thingiverse, where people share 3D models, which is a really, really interesting way of starting. So rather than saying, like, I want to design this thing for myself, I've got like maybe a little iPad here and I want to stand for it, I just go to Thingiverse and just say, like, let me find a stand for that, and then someone might have, might have a couple of dozens of models to choose from, which you download and fabricate on your machine, and so like an hour later you have that part. I think it's kind of the next logical step of online shopping, if you will. But then I think the really interesting thing happens when people start kind of designing their own systems. So 3D editing, for example, used to be very, very complicated. Today there are interesting sites like tinkercad.com, which is actually something you can pick up in a couple of minutes, and it allows you to kind of drag a couple of cubes together and reshape them, and then send this to your printer, and then you make your own kind of models. What we're exploring in the lab right now is to make that process more interactive and actually allow people to not just kind of design something and print it out. We have a system, for example, called Constructible. We're not using a 3D printer, we're using a laser cutter for that, so it's a machine that cuts parts out with a laser. And rather than using a computer system at all, you lean over the laser and use a laser pointer, as you would use in a presentation, to point at the materials and sketch directly onto the workpiece, and then the laser of the machine actually follows and cuts that part for you. So very much like using a touch screen. There's no mouse, no keyboard or so. You're just kind of pointing and clicking, if you will, what you want, and the machine instantly makes an object for you.
Yeah, but don't you have to be, I mean, I can't draw with a darn, so if you have to have some talent for that. I would imagine. I mean, otherwise you're going to get something that's not very precise or doing things freehand.
Exactly. So as I was saying earlier, the general formula of all these systems for decades has been that you have some smarts in between. So what we're using in this research prototype is there's an overhead camera that observes where your laser dot is moving, that you kind of move around. And yes, it will be kind of jerky for all of us. And what the software does, it kind of beautifies that for you. So when you're using a tool that says, I want to make rectilinear content, so it will only find out what the closest rectangle is to what you were drawing and produces that actually. So without you necessarily noticing, you will produce something that looks very, very accurate because they're between you and the machine. The fabrication machine is a computer system. You can think of this similar to power steering. When you're like in your car, you feel like you're controlling the steering, when as a matter of fact, you kind of, you're providing suggestions for the system, but most
whoop, I think we...
Oh, it might have dropped.
You may have dropped. I don't know. Yep, I think we lost Patrick. Well, I'm sure he'll realize that and then come back to us. But I found this this is fascinating stuff. When you're right, when you're driving a power steering on a car, it's not like this is obviously before your day. You probably don't remember before cars had power steering, but
I do, and you had to like go a million times around just to turn. Yeah.
No. I mean, it was very hard to turn the wheels. My sports car didn't have power steering, and that was it. Oh, I think Patrick is back with us now. Patrick, are you back with us? I think he's trying to. Anyway, because it was very difficult to turn the steering wheel. I mean, if you were stationary, if you weren't moving, and it made navigation or parking very, very difficult to do. Now, of course, with power steering, it's just one finger and you can turn the wheel. And it's easy. Patrick, are you there now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me too?
Oh, now you sound a lot better too.
You're back and you sound better. This is weird.
Okay, fantastic. All right, I apologize for cross-Atlantic technology here. Absolutely, yeah. So steering wheels. So I cannot see right now, so we have to play it a little bit here. So as I was suggesting, the steering wheel, as we use it in cars today, makes a big difference because of a machine between you and the vehicle in this case that kind of beautifies your input. In this case, in a very simple. Predictable way. But for the system we're building, you can actually have any type of beautification. So it will also help you make gearboxes, for example, by allowing you to produce pairs of gears that fit very well. You can make finger joints, so you can make finger joints are ways to assemble flat pieces into a 3D object. That's very commonly used with laser cutting. And so the system already contains a good amount of smarts that allow you to get started on a problem that you normally would have trouble tackling. And I think this is what's going to characterize more of these applications in the future, a smart system in between that allows a reasonably novice user to perform something that would have been impossible otherwise.
But basically, you're talking like some sort of a man-machine interface, and they're going to be improving. Is what you're really talking about?
Yes, I mean, I think that, my lab at Hasso Plattner is all about human-computer interactions, so certainly that's a focus. But I think the smarts that can happen in between the user input and the 3D printer or laser cutter will actually not just represent knowledge from the user interface, but also from the domain. So I mentioned airplanes. People have made tools for making furniture, for example, that will check if what you're making is structurally sound. So there's actually very nice. There's been also not really commercial system, but called sketchchair.com, I think. And it's very interesting because the system actually allows you to design your own chair, and then you can try it on in the web browser. You can put like a little rag doll into it, and you can see if the chair actually falls over, and if it meets some of the criteria. So you can do a little bit of testing in it, and a little physics simulation allows you to get a grip on the question if this is actually something that you want produced, or if it's not ready for that. And I think that's more and more of these things will happen in the future. To our own system, we made a 3D extension, which is very interesting for us as researchers. Normally, laser cutters only produce flat things, unlike 3D printers. The benefit of laser cutters is they're very, very fast, but they only make two-dimensional things. So we made a version of it. We ended up calling laser origami, like borrowed from the Japanese art of folding paper, that also bends the paper into the plastic in this case into shape. So what you can do is you can actually produce. We made things like camera stands and so on that were not just cut but also folded inside of the machine, allowing reasonably simple workflow to kind of produce complete 3D objects in kind of the time scale of something like a few minutes, something like 2 or 3 minutes will make a kind of a simple machine for that matter. We're working on extensions that allow you to add gears and simple mechanisms, so you can have moving parts and simple machines for these things. So I think the concept itself is promising. From our perspective, the interesting part is to work directly with this device. If you think, I mentioned this earlier, we're kind of at the stage, in some ways, that computing was in the 50s and 60s when people used punch cards. You know, there was some sort of, you dropped off your program and then the next day you get something back. And I think for fabrication machines, these prototypes I'm talking about are very interesting because they are kind of the step away from this batch processing. We just say, like, I want something made, let me come back tomorrow, to something where you actually control the flow of what's happening as you're moving forward. So rather than having everything premeditated and printed, you actually interact with the system along and control it. And as you see the object kind of emerge, you say, oh, you know, I actually want this a little bigger, I want this a little different, much more like you would interact with a touchscreen application to kind of customize and shape its needs. You could do that with several people collaborating. And so I think what we're seeing is that the way we interact with these fabrication machines becomes much more like the way we used to interacting with computers today. You know.
Whoop. I think we lost them again.
Oh, this internet connection is spotty at best.
Yeah, just getting into he's really getting into it, and as am I. This is fascinating stuff. Oh, there he's back again. Okay. So we'll continue on.
You can really see where he got his professor credentials from, because he's actually pretty engaging.
Yes, very, very engaging. There you are. Okay, we're back.
He certainly did not get his professor credentials for setting up networks, apparently, here, because I'm glad the university took me. So.
No, now I understand you're a computer scientist by trade. And is it true now that you just took on several mechanical engineering students, and why did you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my group is I'm very fond of my students, so Hasso Plattner Institute is actually kind of the best place in Germany for software engineering. So students are fantastic at building large software systems. At the same time, as I mentioned, the idea of these systems is that you have some sort of domain knowledge in there, right? And that's the same when when you talk about, in the 80s desktop publishing. At some point, someone on the team has to be someone who knows how to put type on a piece of paper. And so I think we're going to see more kind of mixed teams in the future, where in our case, the most recent students that were added to the lab are a mechatronics student and a mechanical engineering student, because that's actually really, really important for adding domain knowledge. So if you want to produce a computer system that helps people make little machines, the software has to understand, what does it mean to be structurally sound? How does friction work? Different forces. When does it break? We're making a software right now that allows people to make 3D objects, but they're not specifying the entire space anymore. They're only defining some sort of an outer shape, and the software actually takes care of what's inside. So it kind of engineers for you. You're more like the customer. You could think of as one person, the user is kind of the architect, and the system is the structural engineer. So the user might have a vision of what appearance think of a chair, so you would like to achieve. But you would not want to deal with the technical issues of knowing when is it going to break, where I have to reinforce the material. So the computer system is doing these things for you. To get these things to work, I think interdisciplinary teams will be invaluable. And it's been a fantastic ride so far to have this mixed team where you kind of watch the students teach each other, share experiences, and we kind of relive all the things that we take for granted. As we watch students from the other kind of domain pick them up, and the other way around. It's a very inspiring experience.
So when do you start stealing students from the medical colleges or the paleontology colleges, and start adding other areas of expertise? Because right now you're really focusing on mechanical engineering and 3D printing, and computer science, but really can't all, or I don't know how literature is going to work in there, but can't all fields really benefit from this kind of technology?
I think absolutely. The question is in what order, right? So I think it starts out with software, because I think the software is the driving force behind this type of system, and the next thing I think is some basic understanding in mechanical things, or physics, if you will. And I think as the field will progress further, more and more people from more specialized domains will enter and create more specialized applications. So, for example, when I talked about this neck brace we're kind of designing, now we're going to do a reasonably good job, but certainly working with more people on, who have a tremendous experience in neck braces would be super beneficial here. But that's exactly what's going to happen in the future anyways. As the machinery is spreading, more people will have access to this, people will share the results. I think the community around 3D printing and laser cutting so is very open and willing to share their results. And so what you see happen now is that you would expect someone to share some early design, someone else is going to pick it up, and very similar to how things work in the open source community, that people will elaborate on these things, and evolution is going to happen in part this way, and in part obviously just through collaboration, as is quite common in research, obviously.
Real quick, and you mentioned open source. We love open source as well, and things like that, but invariably, if this really does become as large as you're predicting it to be, and it really is looking that way, companies and corporations and things like that, they're going to want to be the infrastructure behind it, and that's when you start getting digital rights management. You start getting people saying, "Hey, no, this 3D printer only works, using Apple Macintosh or whatever." Like right now, because it's so hobbyist and it's to the point where it's being researched and that kind of thing, people are more than happy to say, "Here's look what I did," and the people looking are also in the same field. And they're like, "Oh, that's really cool, and check out what we did with that." But I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be commercialized. Do you think it's going to hurt the chances of this getting into everyone's homes by being commercialized?
Well, I mean, if you say it's going to hurt, I think it's going to hurt. Yeah, I think. Gosh, yeah. When I was a kid, so I grew up in the 70s, and when I was a kid, it was illegal to record from the radio. Very interesting. And then I grew up. So I grew up in Germany, and it was illegal to record from the radio. And then somehow people figured out that like for every blank tape, like a few cents were given to the music industry, and somehow that seemed to like fix things. And it's kind of sad in a way to see how today, the sharing of things is just much more complicated, because we haven't gotten to a point where we've never come up with a deal. So I think the kids who go to school today, there's certainly issues there. And the weird thing is exactly these things you will start to see, and you're already starting to see with 3D objects. So today, I think, if you're buying an object, if you look at music, I think it used to be that you owned the music if you owned the record. And if you didn't have the record, you didn't have the music. It's very simple, because the music and the record were one and the same thing. With the internet and MP3s, that has certainly changed. You can possess the music without owning it, right? Because you have an MP3 that your friend at school gave you, and that actually generated a lot of confusion. Now, for physical objects, that's about to happen as well. So you could actually possess a 3D object without owning it, which sounds completely absurd from today's perspective, but that's what's going to happen, right? So you could actually download a blueprint of something, make it, without the person who actually kind of invented this particular design and has the copyright on it agrees with it. And I'm a little worried about this, that we're going to replicate what I think of as kind of being, a somewhat suboptimal solution in the intellectual domain space for things like music. I think we're going to see more of the struggle with 3D objects. You already start things. A company called Authenticize, they will not give you the 3D model for download anymore. They're just going to stream it to your machine, so you cannot store it and replicate it later. And I think that's going to be good for like a moment, not very long, I think. And I think we're going to see more of the struggle actually as it develops. So people on Thingiverse, actually, this kind of online sharing sites for 3D models, some models were taken down because people said this looks too much like the thing that I actually designed. And so I think these are things that we have to work out. This is not what we primarily do. We primarily work on interactive systems, but we made a little prototype just to kind of, it's more of an art piece, if you will. Homage to like a 1960s TV show, we ended calling it Scotty, and the machine comes in pairs, and for example, Craig has one and I have one, and I want to send an object to him, then I can stick a part in there. My Scotty application will contains a little mill bit. So let's imagine I made a little a little logo for the show and hand carved this here, stick it into the machine, and my machine will now start. I enter his email address, and it will now scan my device. It will digitize. So it grinds it down layer by layer. It destroys the objects in the process, and as it does that, it digitizes and encrypts it. So only Craig's machine is able to decrypt it, and Craig's machine will produce it only once. So by the moment I hit the teleport button, it disassembles the object and will only replicate it exactly once. So this was actually interesting. This thing actually went through like the blogs a couple of weeks ago, and it was fantastic dialogues online. There was a lot of debate if that has anything to do with teleportation. Obviously, we did not create a wormhole to kind of stick the object in, but it actually fulfilled some of the criteria of teleportation in the sense that we guarantee that there's only one. There's multiple definitions of teleportation. One of them is the idea that you kind of disassemble and reassemble. And to a certain extent, you could envision something similar actually becoming relevant in an eBay of the future. You could envision that, like, I'm buying an object from you. Today on things like eBay, I can actually order. I can purchase instantly, I can pay instantly, but then I have to wait 2 weeks for the object to show up through the postal service. So you could envision in the future that we're going to share these things digitally. They're going to be fast.
Yep. Well,
so close. Almost made it to the end of the hour.
Okay. I mean, he knows what to do. He'll call back again. But, I mean, it's fascinating stuff. Oh, there he is. Okay, he's back. Okay. Yeah, Patrick, we're almost there. So, we are talking to Patrick Bodish, who's, again, the professor and chair of the Human Computer Interaction Lab at Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany. There you are. Okay, so we almost got to the end there. So why don't you finish up your thoughts?
Okay, so I was talking about maybe you're buying something from me on eBay right now, and what I'm doing is I'm actually putting the object into this kind of approximated teleportation unit. And it shows up on your end, and now you actually have arguably have the original. Obviously, don't. And I was saying there was interesting debate online if that, what the implications of this are. But I think just what we're going to see is that people will just regularly copy things for a while, and then there will be debate about intellectual property and copyright. And I think certain combinations of scanners and 3D printers will actually allow you to kind of essentially make sure that the object was not replicated, that there's still only one object. So if you owned the object before, now in the process your copy was destroyed and a new copy emerged at the other side. So one way of using that could be for like online purchase of used goods, such as on eBay.com. To allow people to receive objects in the same day, like a few minutes after they complete the purchase, that they are already in possession of the object, which I think is an interesting direction to go.
Yeah, and it poses a lot of interesting questions that are probably best left to the lawyers and what have you. And I think we're certainly not going to resolve that here at this point. But just the fact that we're talking about this technology is amazing. Patrick, we're pretty much out of time. I want to just let people know that if they want more information, they go to your website. It's kind of long to spell out and talk, but we have a link to it. If you just go to computeramerica.com, click on our show notes, the show notes button, you'll see today's show, which is the 17th of March, and you'll have a link there. You'll see the Patrick's website, and you can see more about what he's doing and what they're doing over there. Fascinating stuff, and I want to thank you for being here with us on the show tonight, Patrick. I don't know if you're going to go back to sleep now, or if you're going to begin your day.
I've got a good couple of hours of sleep ahead of me. So, but thanks so much for having me. This was really fun. Thank you for having me.
And thank you. And thank you so very much for joining us. And it was a pleasure having you here on the show tonight, Patrick. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And good night. All right, get some sleep. All right, there you go. Okay, Dr. Patrick Bodish, again, professor and chair of the Human Computer Interaction Lab at Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany, talking about the work that he's doing there, and certainly in the spirit of our focus on science this month. Again, you can go to the website and see more about what he's doing there. Coming up in the next hour, we've got computer news, computer and technology news, brought to you by Slimware Utilities, the official optimization software of Computer America. I haven't had a chance to look at all the stories, Ben. Have you had a chance to look at any of them yet? Because we're having all these difficulties here.
Do I look at the stories that I choose for the show? Yeah, of course, every night.
Okay.
There's actually a couple really interesting stories about Microsoft 10. All of them, surprisingly, I like. So it's there's a lot of really good news about Windows 10 that came out today. The first official NVIDIA Titan X review is out.
Whoa.
And yeah, exactly. And apparently there's a giant geomagnetic storm. So anyone as south as, I want to say, Tennessee can see the Northern Lights tonight. So.
And also, a new liquid-based 3D printer takes only minutes instead of hours. You see, this is what's happening. I mean, look, the technology keeps improving. They're getting faster and more efficient, and they're saying this printer is 7 times the speed of current 3D printing. So these stories,
pretty cool technology out there.
Yeah, these stories and more coming up on the show. You're listening to the Computer America Show on the Blog Talk Radio Network, on the IRN Radio Network, and the Boost Radio Network. Ben and I will be back with the computer and technology news. Another News Tips Bullet review from Marty Winston is all coming up in Hour 2 of the Computer America Show.
Broadcasting live. It's the only national radio talk show on computers to air every weeknight. Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. The first hour's behind us, but there's still more of tech news, tech talk, and your phone calls. We're being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. You got computer problems? Bring them on. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into Hour 2 of the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. This is the Computer America Show, and I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
I thought what he was talking about was really interesting.
Yep.
I did. And if you missed any portion of that and you want to hear that again or hear it, again, Dr. Patrick Bodish, Professor and Chair of the Human Computer Interaction Lab at Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany. It's a mouthful to go say that every time, but he's certainly well accomplished, and they're doing a lot of interesting things with 3D lasers and 3D printers and laser cutters, and you can certainly listen to again. Just go to our archives page at ComputerAmerican.com, and you can listen to everything that all of our shows. You can not only listen to them, but you can also watch them as well. Okay, so I think that being said, let's just go right into computer news. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me do this before we start. I always do it toward the end of the show, and I really need to do this at the beginning of the show, and that is talk a little bit about our contest at Computer America. And so we have a number of really wonderful contests to play. Just go to our contest page at ComputerAmerica.com. It's under the Interact menu, and you can see our Logitech contest. We have 3 great prizes we give away. Third, second, and grand prize. The grand prize being the Logitech X300 mobile wireless stereo speaker, valued at $70. The entry form is right on the same page, so you can enter into the contest. It began on Monday, March the 2nd, and will go through Friday, April the 10th at 12 a.m. Eastern Time. It'll shut down over the weekend. We draw the 3 winning names. On Monday, April 13th, we announce the 3 winners. And also, so enter that. It's really simple. And also, there's our show reminder win a contest. When you subscribe to our weekly email newsletter, the show reminder, every week from that list of subscriber names, you draw a winning name to win a really nice prize from Logitech. That's the Logitech T650 wireless rechargeable glass touchpad. Beautiful. Valued at $80. So head over to ComputerAmerica.com, enter in all of our contests, and you might win something really, really nice. You'll have a lot of fun doing it. Okay. That being said, let's do some computer news.
All right.
Tonight's computer and technology news is brought to you by Slimware Utilities, the official optimization software of Computer America. You can visit them at slimwareutilities.com to clean, speed up, and optimize your Windows system for
free.
For free. There you go. Yes, everything at Slimware Utilities is completely free, and you should download them all. Why not? They're free, and they're incredibly effective at what they do. Just keep them there when you need them, and eventually you will. You'll just apply them, and it will certainly clean, speed up, and optimize your Windows system, and you'll be happy that you did, and you'll thank us for it. SlimwareUtilities.com. And in our first news story of tonight, we've been talking about the NVIDIA Titan X. And evidently now there's an official review from Maximum PC. They've actually got hands-on. Tom McNamara actually did this. And he's saying a new hero descends from the heights of Mount G-Force. He goes on to say, in ancient Greek mythology, the Titans are the immediate descendants of the primordial gods. So it is with the NVIDIA GeForce GTX Titan, descended from the company's top-shelf professional workstation GPUs. First debuting in March of 2013, the original Titan was nearly the most powerful video card that the company could offer. They sealed off a couple of items that would be of little interest to gamers, which also prevented professionals from using these much less expensive gamer variants for workstation duties. In the 2 years since, NVIDIA has iterated on this design, adding more shader processors, or CUDA cores, as NVIDIA likes to call them, and even adding a second GPU core on the same card. Now the time has come for it to deliver the Maxwell generation of super premium GPUs, this time dubbed the GTX Titan X. He says, and it's a beast. Despite being stuck on the 28 nanometer processor node for several years now, NVIDIA continues to extract more and more performance from its silicon. Interestingly, the card goes up for sale today, but only at NVIDIA's own online storefront. There is currently a limit of 2 per order. Why would you want to order more?
Oh man, because you have people who really need those 4 graphics cards to really render that game perfectly.
Yeah. Well, NVIDIA tells us that you'll be able to buy it right from other stores and a pre-built systems over the next few weeks. Okay. These days, you can use the number of shader cores as a rough estimate of performance. We say rough because the Maxwell cores in this Titan X are, according to NVIDIA, 40% faster than the Kepler cores in the earlier Titan. So when you see the Titan X has only 3,072 of them, this is actually a huge boost. It's about 30% more than the GTX 980, which is already a barnstormer. For reference, the difference in shader count between the GTX 780 and the original Titan was about 16%. The Titan X also has an almost ridiculous 12 gigabytes of GDDR5 RAM, VRAM. We say almost because NVIDIA has some ambitious goals for the resolution that it expects you to be able to play at with this card. At the Game Developer Conference 2 weeks ago, its reps pitched the Titan X to us, to the Maximum PC, as the first GPU that can handle 4K gaming solo at high settings. They demoed Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, which wasn't a solid 60 frames per second as they readily acknowledged, but we did see all the graphics settings cranked up, and gameplay was smooth at about 45 frames per second when paired with a G-Sync monitor. As its name implies, G-Sync synchronizes your monitor's refresh rate to the frame rate being delivered to your video card, which vastly reduces tearing. That is a very nice feature, by the way. They also enabled motion blur, which can help mask frame rate drops. For their review, they used 7 high-end cards that have come out in the same 2-year time frame as the original Titan. Some of these are no longer sold in stores, but they still provide an important frame of reference, and their owners may want to know if upgrading it is going to be worth it. Note that the clock speeds in the charts in this article are not all for reference versions. These are for particular models that they used for the review. So they go on, you can check out the specs, but basically he's saying that this thing is a monster. And the tightness.
Yeah, to wrap it up, that they have a conclusion. Overall, things are looking pretty rosy for the Titan X, since it's packed with a huge amount of ROPs, SMs, and shader processors and virtual RAM. It's able to overcome the limitations of the aging 28 nanometer processor. The Maxwell generation CUDA cores are also about 40% faster, and the older Kepler version. And the company improved color compression for additional performance gains. It's not the chosen one if you want the game with a single GPU at 4K, but you can get pretty close if you're willing to tweak a few graphical settings. Also keep in mind that it was about 1 year ago when NVIDIA debuted the GTX Titan Z, which has 2 Titan Black GPUs on a single card. So they may plan to drop a dual Titan X sometime soon as well. And there's room in the lineup for a 980 Ti, which is one of their other high-end graphics cards. But yeah, one of the surprising things was that they ran it up against a couple games. They ran it up against Metro Last Light, Arkham Origins, Hitman Absolution, Shadow Mortar. Like they're all pretty recent games with good graphics, and like even the highest benchmark for Titan X for that graphics card, none of those games really ran 60 frames per second.
Wow.
Even with this graphics card.
Wow.
And that's well, it hit 60 frames per second on all those games when it was running at a resolution of 2560 by 1440, and it hit 60 across the board. But as soon as you get up to 3840 by 2160, which is essentially 4K, it hit about 30 frames per second across the board.
Still, 30 frames per second is that's
pretty good.
Yeah, very good. I mean, what is it? 24 frames a second is actually before, with the ice before it's.
Technically, the term is 30. 24 is movies, and then what gives it that cinematic quality. 30 is what they recommend for no stuttering or anything like that. But 60 is definitely ideal.
Okay. All right. Anything above 60 really is you don't notice it. It's
not true again. It's hard to explain this to you, Craig, because you don't play video games. You will definitely notice a difference between a game running at 60 frames per second and a game running at 240 frames per second. There's a smoothness that's between the two. Like there may be like a drop off in terms of frames per second and quality of the image, but first of all you're gonna notice the difference, and second, if there's any kind of spike in graphics or there's any kind of drop, if you are running 240 frames per second instead of 30 frames per second, you're not going to notice those drops as much.
Now, is 240 frames? What does it max out at?
What do you mean?
Well, you mentioned 240 frames a second. I mean, we're talking 30, 60. Is 240 frames a second? Is that really the top?
No, I have games that run up to 480 on my machine. I mean, the frames per second really, and I have a pretty old graphics card too. My graphics card is about 3.5 years old now. I can get up to about 400 on some games.
And you say it makes a difference?
Oh yeah, it really does.
Okay. You should know. I mean, you're the gaming expert, so.
Trust me on this one.
I do trust you. All right, so now I think you have the next story, right? Yes.
Yeah, sure. How about this one? Grayson, unfortunately, he had our last show with us last Gamer Tuesday. We are going to be having a new gamer correspondent, and we're definitely going to be talking about this.
Josh Boykin, yeah.
Josh Boykin, indeed. And we predicted a while ago, and it's finally happening. Nintendo has gone mobile.
Yeah.
That's big news. So this is a Wired article, and Nintendo is finally bringing Mario to mobile phones. The maker of the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS, which has long resisted any suggestion that it puts games on smartphones and tablets, said today that it would team up with Dina, one of Japan's leading mobile game companies, to create games using its popular franchises for mobile devices. The two companies will acquire 10%. The two companies will enter into a capital alliance that will see Nintendo acquire 10% of Dina's outstanding stock, for about 22 billion yen, and Dina will acquire 1.24%, which is approximately, again, 22 billion yen. So,
yeah, a lot of yen. That's a lot of
that's
yen.
that's a lot of yens. If you had all those yens lined up, you have a very long yen line. Anyways. So, quote, Nintendo has decided to utilize smart devices aggressively, end quote. That was the president, Satoru Iwata, okay, in a joint presentation with Dina earlier today. Now that smart devices have grown to become the window for so many people to personally connect with society, it would be a waste not to use these devices. What we've been saying forever, Nintendo, because they've been holding fast to their Nintendo 3DS, their Nintendo 3DS, and their other Nintendo handheld devices. They make their own devices. They make their own Game Boys, and they don't. They've been resisting smartphones and tablets for the longest time. We've had many a show where we talked about if Nintendo said, "Hey, we wanted to make a smartphone app for Pokemon. We want to make a smartphone app for Mario. We want to make a smartphone app for, Samus." They could name any price, and people would pay it. So it seems like they're finally jumping into, the one area where Nintendo has been staying out of on purpose, and looks like they're finally jumping in with both feet. Now, one thing to note here is that this does not mean there's going to be direct ports. It means that they're teaming up with Dina, as I said, who is an expert in creating mobile platform games. So they're going to be using their franchises, think Mario, think Zelda, think Pokemon, think Kirby, what have you, and they're going to be building new games, completely new games from the ground up, using those franchises. So it's not going to be a one-to-one port. Like, you're not going to be able to buy Mario for the Wii U or the 3DS or your smartphone. It's going to be completely different games. So there's going to be, and they have a quote here saying that there's going to be significant differences in the controls, strengths, and weaknesses between the controllers for the dedicated game system and the touchscreens of smart devices. We have no intention at all to port existing game titles for dedicated game platforms to smart devices, because if we cannot provide our consumers with the best possible play experience, it would just ruin the value of Nintendo's IP, which is very true. You don't want, let's say, Mario to, be released out on the market and have a horrible gaming experience and potentially turn people off from the franchise, which people love right now. So their goal is to port it over and, create new mobile games, which is great. Nintendo on your smartphone. People have been praying for that forever. It's just they're trying to be really cautious about not ruining the experience for anyone. But at the end of the day, again, Nintendo for smartphones. How is that a bad thing?
Very cool. Very cool.
That's all you got?
No, well, instead of having those little Nintendo handheld things, now you can actually do it on your smartphone. I remember you had the 2D and the 3D little Nintendo games that you play in the little handheld unit. Now you can do it. You'll be able to do it on your smartphone. You won't have to have a.
The last Game Boy I owned 3 of the originals, and then I owned a Color, and then I owned a Game Boy Advance, and then a Color, and then I had a Game Boy. I might have been Advanced. Yeah, the last one I owned was Advanced, and then after the Advanced, I moved on to the Nintendo 3DS and those devices. They had like the Pocket and things like that, but. It's been a while since I used Nintendo devices, but that's just because, at least for me, and especially when you're younger and you have really no income, because who wants to hire a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old?
Yeah.
But that pay barrier, because everyone has a smartphone. Most people join some kind of family plan, and everyone gets a smartphone. For a Nintendo 3DS, you have to shell out about $100 or $150 for that console, for the Nintendo 3DS, before you even get a game. So, if anything, Nintendo is really going to see a benefit from this, because I know myself, the only reason I haven't been playing Nintendo games is because I don't feel like jumping that $150 barrier. If you just put it on your smartphone for $2, $3, $4 for an app that you can play, that's going to be a way more way better for someone like me who doesn't feel like spending $180 for a video game.
That makes sense. And it looks like it's coming soon. So I know it's been a long time, but as you said, it's a smart move on their part.
We're definitely going to be talking about this more on our Gamer Tuesday because when I say it's big news, it's big news.
Okay.
Even if Craig doesn't see it.
Well, yeah, I'm not at the games as much as you are, and that's what kind of mixes things up here. That's what makes the world go.
But are you into economies at all?
Yeah, okay, gamer economies. Here's an interesting story from Wired. And I didn't see this coming. I use PayPal. Don't like it, but I use it because it's I always wondered that their slogan is they're the most beloved way of sending people money. I don't know, but according to Wired, you can now send money on Facebook. Let me say that again. You can now send money on Facebook. So they asked the question, what's in it for them? Okay. Well, Facebook just unveiled a new service that lets you send money via its instant messaging app, Facebook Messenger. It's kind of like existing services from Snapchat, Square, and Venmo, letting you readily swap money with other people as opposed to businesses, both near and far. But there's a big difference. It runs on Facebook. That means this new service instantly reaches the vast number of people who are already on Facebook. Suddenly, it's far easier for a large swath of the population to send and receive cash. But friend-to-friend payments can also feed the much larger ambitions of Mark Zuckerberg and the company. Facebook's new payment tool, you see, encourages all those millions of Facebookers to store their debit card info on the company's machine. And this will likely fuel Facebook's efforts to transform itself into a kind of e-commerce engine that competes directly with the likes of Amazon. Facebook is already testing a buy button on its social network that lets you instantly purchase stuff that shows up in your news feed. But that button becomes a lot more powerful if you've already entered your credit card into Facebook. Facebook is moving in the same direction as Apple and Google. It wants to be the place where you spend not only your time but your money. Now, the new Facebook service is no surprise. Last summer, David Marcus, the CEO of payments giant PayPal, joined Facebook to oversee Messenger. And later on, a Facebook earnings call, CEO and founder Mark Zuckerberg indicated that Messenger would dovetail with some sort of peer-to-peer payments service. In the meantime, Snapchat added a payments tool to its popular messaging app, piggybacking on an existing tool from San Francisco startup Square. That was so cool. But Snapchat isn't nearly as popular as Facebook, and it's a collection of other services isn't nearly as large. And so the Facebook social network is used by over 1.3 billion people worldwide. And Messenger, which the company spun off from its social network, now serves around 500 million, according to Facebook's last public numbers. That's probably about 2.5 times the number of people on Snapchat. This means more people are more likely to use Facebook payment service than others. But more important for Facebook, especially since it's not going to charge for sending and receiving money, is your data, in this case, debit card numbers. So, to send money, you have to store your Visa or MasterCard details with Facebook. To receive money, the company explained, you have to do the same. And once Facebook has that data, it can build out services, revenue-generating services that tempt you to spend. Still, they're not charging you for it.
No, they're not charging you for it, but again, it's Facebook. So if they're not making money on the transaction itself, then where are they making their money?
Now, Facebook declined to be interviewed for this particular story from Wired, but the company tells them that If you enter your debit card details for use with Messenger, you can also use them with games on Facebook proper. And with those cards in hand, Facebook has a more direct path towards the world of Amazonian e-commerce. Last summer, around the same time it hired PayPal's Marcus, Facebook started testing a buy button in users' news feeds, letting them instantly purchase goods and services without leaving Facebook. This too requires a card on file with the company. For the consumer, all this is yet another push towards a world where you can more easily spend your money. It's like Google Wallet or Apple Pay, except it only works online, not in stores. If you send payments via your debit card and Messenger, you can authenticate the transaction simply by pressing the fingerprint reader on your Apple iPhone. And odds are, things will work much the same way with the Facebook buy button. Okay, for Facebook, this is the next big financial step. The site will give companies a means of not only advertising goods and services, but actually selling them. And ultimately, that will drive the advertising revenues of the future. And Google, by the way, is moving down a similar path. But as is so often in the case with Google, Facebook, and Apple, a question lingers. Do you want these companies handling so much of your existence? Facebook already knows what you look like and who your friends are. Are you ready for it to also know what you buy? Intriguing.
Well, I guess if you're okay with Facebook holding on to your debit cards, and let's be honest here, they have had security breaches before. So, to say that it's perfectly safe is, I think, a bit dismissive of the security threats out there. But you can see why they're not charging you. They want you to have that, they want you to have your debit card on file just so you get those impulse buys, because Facebook, let's face it, is full of impulses, especially if you play Facebook games. There is nothing more impulsive than those Facebook games. It's like, oh, would you like, to add 3 more minutes or what have you? They are perfect at it. So, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess if you want to send money over Facebook, you just got a whole lot easier.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So,
what do you think?
I'm for anything that makes paying easier and faster. I mean, one of the things I don't like about PayPal is it takes, after you do it, you get the transfers, and then it takes 3 business days before you get them, you actually see the money, and then they ding you, a percentage for that. So you feel like you're getting.
You're really hurt over these fees.
Yeah, I mean, they're the fees, they're not good. There's got to be another way.
Well, they're
of
not
doing
good,
it.
but they're there's a reason behind the fees.
Yeah, they want to make money.
Yeah. Oh well. Okay, so next news story. How about we do the one? Let's get into some Microsoft 10 details, because there's a lot of them, and this one is probably one of the most intriguing. We've all been there when you've corrupted your Windows 10, or you got a virus, or it crashed for some reason. Well, apparently Windows 10 is trying to take on that problem. This is from Hot Hardware. Windows 10 reclaims disk space by deleting recovery image and employing file compression. So with every passing day, Windows 10 becomes more and more intriguing as we learn about new features that that lurk just beneath the surface. Earlier today, we learned that Microsoft will enable a new peer-to-peer option that will make it faster and more efficient for customers to download updates for the operating system and installed applications. This afternoon, Microsoft has spilled the beans on some storage tweaks that will be welcome news to Windows users that own devices with small capacity solid-state drives. The Windows team blogged today that it will employ, quote, 2 separate and independent approaches for reclaiming storage space to make Windows 10 less of a burden on hard drives and solid-state drives than its predecessors. The first method is to reclaim storage space relies on the use of file compression for system files. With file compression turned on, Microsoft is able to save 1.5 gigabits of storage for the 32-bit version of Windows 10, and even more impressive 2.6 gigs for the 64-bit version.
Wow.
So let's say you have one of those old-fashioned 32 gig solid-state drives. Then you just saved yourself 2.6 gigs on a 32 gig. That's a lot of space. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. Considering the file, considering that file compression can sometimes have an adverse effect on system performance, a number of steps are taken to ensure that optimum performance levels are maintained on the wide variety of hardware. Microsoft also says that it will use compression to shrink the footprint of apps, which should be an additional boon for consumers. So yeah, the article says as we get closer to the public release of Windows 10, we're eager to hear about what else Microsoft has in store for us. So far, color us impressed, as we're definitely ready to get the sour taste of Windows 8.x out of our mouths. But yeah, like Windows is releasing these nice little leaks about what's in Windows 10 that every time they're like, oh, that's neat, oh, that's cool, oh, that's a nice feature. And it's nothing like the Windows 8 releases, or at least the Windows 8 leaks, like they were a couple years ago, where people were saying, oh, they did away with the start button, oh, they did away with the task manager, oh, they did, like, everything that came out about Windows 8 was they're changing it so much we hate it. And this one, it's like, oh, we're changing a few things and you're gonna love it. So it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear about that, and we're definitely going to have a few more stories pertaining to Windows 10 and some nice things they're doing. Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. Turns out Craig, for some reason, dropped out of the Google Hangouts. So if you're watching us through our live video stream, you will only be hearing me for the moments. Craig is trying to get back in right now. If you're listening through Blog Talk Radio or any of those other venues, you will be hearing, Craig and Craig's feed. He's, as I said, getting back to it. So we're doing computer technology news brought to you by Slimmer Utilities. Right now, we should be having commercials. Craig is obviously having problems. So, we'll see where he is right now. But while we're waiting for him to get back, sorry, he's talking to me right now, let's just jump into another story. One second. Yep, so Craig is befuddled once again, so we're just going to jump into another one. We're going to do another Windows 10 story, because they're actually pretty off the charts tonight. Apparently Microsoft...
This is Marty Winston with the News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America, this time Castle OS. The Wild West of home control devices, controllers, protocols, and incompatibilities very much limits a user's ability to make significant things happen, especially when you try to act natively with more than one try. Castle OS is software that addresses a growing list of third-party controllers and home control protocols, bringing with it some sophisticated ways to consider the conditions of sensors and schedules and more. Much of it is like a rules language, some of it like a scripting language, but all of it approachable with no requirement for any major programming skills. On Windows, as on many mobile platforms, it runs as an HTML app, largely browser agnostic. We like that it's very good at setting up sensor-centric automation. With enough sensors, workspaces become to some extent self-aware, and there's some level of autonomy in simply setting up stimulus response instructions. Bottom line, in the Tower of Babel of home control systems, Hasso OS offers a facile Rosetta Stone with a dollop of finesse. This is Marty Winston with a News Tips Bullet Review for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. Sorry for the wonky behavior there during the commercial break. It is 34 minutes past the hour. That was Marty Winston. We are doing computer and technology news brought to you by Slimware Utilities. And Craig, you're back.
Yeah, what happened, I think, is it was just a Google Hangouts glitch, and we maintained audio on the network, but the Hangouts lost me for a moment, and I think I know what's causing it. So I think we're just trying to do too many things at once. I'm trying to load too many news stories in advance at once, and I think it's overloading everything. So there it is. Anyway, Ben and I are doing computer and technology news, brought to you by Slimware Utilities, and this next story is Sling TV comes to the Xbox One, adds history, lifetime, and more March Madness. Okay. Internet TV services by Apple and Sony may be coming later and soon, respectively, but Sling TV is here today, and it's growing fast. As promised at launch, the service is now available on the Xbox One, making it the first game console with the Sling TV app and the third big screen platform after Amazon Fire TV and Roku. Sling TV is also available on iOS and Android devices, as well as Mac and Windows computers. Boy, it's everywhere, isn't it? Sling once again expanded the selection of channels in its Best of Live TV core package, which costs $20 a month. A&E, History, H2, and Lifetime are now included in the price. They'll be live by the end of March. Sling is also rejiggering 2 of its $5 a month add-on packs, renaming them and shuffling the channel lineups. Okay. More March Madness with True TV. To coincide with the first games of the NCAA tournament known as March Madness, Sling also added Turner channel True TV to its $5 a month Lifestyle Extra Pack. The channel will carry numerous games starting today. TNT and TBS, which are available in Sling's base package, will also air a wide selection of games starting Thursday, March the 19th. In total, the 3 Turner networks will air 49 tourney games and cover the first 3 rounds, as well as select regional finals and the final 4 games on April the 4th. That's way too much sports for me. CBS, which is not available on Sling TV, will carry the remaining 22 games, including the national title game on April the 6th. So there it is. Xbox One promotions and Connect. As usual with Sling TV hardware launch, the companies are offering incentives to get users signed up. According to the press release, current Xbox Live members who have an Xbox One will receive 1 month of Sling TV free after downloading the Sling TV app for the Xbox One App Store. Additionally, the first 5,000 customers who purchase an Xbox One in a Microsoft retail store between March the 17th and March 22nd will receive 3 free months of Sling TV service. Sling's press release also mentions that the Xbox One app allows for gesture-based controls for users of the Kinect and integration with other Xbox One features like Xbox One Snap multitasking feature. So there you go. Okay, Sling TV is now on Xbox.
Yep, they're making a lot of roads into a lot of places that I guess, bar an app from ABC, CBS, what have you, these cable companies weren't going to make it into the Xbox One anyways. So, hey, it's a way for cable companies to get out there and get into the video game consoles. That's good.
It is. It is good. It is good.
Okay, so next story, one that I kind of started before you kind of jump back with the commercials. This one is Microsoft's bold plan to ditch passwords in Windows 10.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for as long as we've called for the death of the password, it's still conspiring to make our lives both more complicated and less secure than they should be. In Windows 10, Microsoft will do its part to ease that particular pain. So long, random, for a string of letters, characters, and numbers. Hello, Windows Hello. Windows Hello, announced today on Microsoft's blog, is an authentication system relies not on typing memorized gibberish, but on face, eye, and fingerprint recognition. Unlocking your laptop or phone will be as simple as looking at it or touching it. Biometric solutions like this aren't unique to Microsoft. Android has offered a face unlock feature since 2011, and fingerprint ID has been unlocking laptops and smartphones for years now. Think the iPhone. But the technology behind the previous offerings, particularly the facial recognition, has historically been lacking, and certainly not as ubiquitous as Windows Hello would be given the predominance of the Windows machine. That's not to say Microsoft has necessarily gotten it right. There are signs, though, that Hello could succeed where others have muddled, particularly in its compatibility with Intel RealSense 3D cameras, a next-generation tech that can, at the very least, tell a human from a photo. Better still, all the data is stored locally, not on some remote Microsoft server. That's really nice.
That is nice.
So they don't have access to your fingerprints, to your face, to your voice, to your blood sample, to your sperm count, to your everything. It's all stored on...
I draw the line at sperm count.
Hey, you know, whatever biometrics entails, I'll be up for it. So once you've signed in with Windows Hello, Microsoft Passport technology will help beat back the password scourge through your computing experience. Once you've identified yourself with Hello, or a PIN on your device lacks biometric powers, the operating system will authenticate apps and websites without sending a password at all. Cool. It won't work on everything, but you should get more out of its but you should get more use out of it as companies and organizations continue to enlist in the Fast Identity Online Alliance.
FIDO.
FIDO. For a group dedicated to the eradication of passwords as we know them. While Hello hasn't trickled out to Windows 10 beta testers, we should be hearing more about how it works in practice soon. So long as it beats typing in the name of the street you grew up on, we should be in good shape. Because, you know, you can guess passwords, you can hack passwords, but you can't hack someone's retina. You can't hack someone's fingerprint, that kind of thing. So I guess for, you know, technology has been out there, but they're going to be implementing it on the operating system itself, not just on a phone, not just on the tablet, but on, you know, an actual computer.
Well, that Intel RealSense 3D cameras are interesting because people were holding up photographs of people's faces and it was fooling it, but evidently now this technology, you can't fool it with a photograph. It has to be the actual person. You know, so the biometrics that these things are beginning to use are themselves becoming more sophisticated and more reliable, and certainly would be. I mean, I use my Touch ID on my iPhone now. I never used to lock it. I never used to pin. Since Touch ID, it's wonderful. You know, unless my fingerprint isn't going to work.
Yeah, if you haven't used any kind of biometrics yet, Touch ID is a really good one. You know, like I said, there's a couple out there, but the biometrics, there was like a worry. It's like, oh, what if what if your fingerprint's dirty? What if what if you get catastrophic facial reconstruction surgery, that kind of thing? And I think those fears are kind of abating. Like they're not as big a problem as they used to be.
You're right. They are. They're not. They're not. I'm all for it. So glad. I mean, there seems to with Windows 10, Microsoft seems to be doing more and more things correct. So, and in that spirit of Microsoft doing things more and more correct with Windows 10, from The Verge, Microsoft is finally killing off the Internet Explorer brand. Finally. Say goodbye to Internet Explorer. Exactly. So, this is according to The Verge. While Microsoft has dropped hints that the Internet Explorer trend is going away, Microsoft has now confirmed that it will use a new name for its upcoming browser successor, codenamed Project Spartan. Speaking at Microsoft Convergence yesterday, Microsoft's marketing chief revealed that the company is currently working on a new name and brand. Okay. He says, we are now researching what new brand or new name for our browser should be in Windows 10. We'll continue to have Internet Explorer, but we will also have a new browser called Project Spartan, which is codenamed Project Spartan. We have to name the thing, is what he's saying. Okay. Internet, I don't know. Okay. Internet Explorer will still exist in some versions of Windows 10, mainly for enterprise compatibility, but the new Project Spartan will be named separately and will be the primary way for Windows 10 users to access the web. Microsoft has tried unsuccessfully to shake off the negative image of Internet Explorer over the past several years with a series of amusing campaigns mocking Internet Explorer 6. The ads did not improve the situation, and Microsoft's former Internet Explorer chief left the company in December, signaling a new era for the browser. He hung his head in shame. Capolessa also detailed the power of using the Microsoft brand over just Windows or Internet Explorer and showed off some research data on the new name for the company's browser versus Internet Explorer. Putting Microsoft in front of the new secret name increased the appeal to some Chrome users in the UK. Just by putting the Microsoft name in front of it, the delta for Chrome users on appeal is incredibly high. Okay. Microsoft is clearly testing names with market research, but it's unclear when the company plans to unveil the final name for its Internet Explorer successor. Judging by Microsoft's own research, it's obvious the company will move as far away from Internet Explorer as possible. I thought they would call it Internet Explorer 2, or Son of Internet.
Well, I mean, they were already up to, what, 10, 11?
Yeah, I know, but Son of Internet Explorer? I don't know.
Son of the Beast.
And it's likely Project Spartan will have the Microsoft name attached to it. Okay. In other words, it's going to be Microsoft's Project Spartan.
Yeah.
How about Microsoft Spartan? It's a catchy name.
Yeah, but you can't borrow too much from the Halo universe continuously.
Internet Spartan?
Okay. No.
Okay. Okay. Elsewhere, on the talk that Microsoft also discussed the ways Microsoft will make money in the future.
I know.
Yeah, really, and clever.
Binger.
What?
Binger.
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 What's Binger?
The platform to use Bing, their search engine.
Binger. And clever ways the company is making use of social media. Microsoft has started to use artists to respond to Twitter users with personalized images, and at least one from the Xbox team was successful at creating attention with an impressive 35,000 retweets. It's all part of improving Microsoft's brand perception and a general admission from Microsoft that it's ready to be loved again. There you go. Well, I think they're doing. Everything I've seen them do so far is showing that they're moving in the right direction. They really are. So, kudos to Microsoft so far. Hopefully, they won't mess it up.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. This one is a little bit long, but it's pretty important. So the SimCity empire has fallen, and Skylines is picking up the pieces. We talked about the story. I think either Monday.
Yeah, it was Monday, I think.
Yeah, it was Monday. That they have a CEO of a small Finnish game developer, Colossal Order, is having a good day. When the author called her, it's only been a few hours since she learned the Colossal Order's SimCity-like game, Cities Skylines, has sold more than 500,000 copies in the first week.
Wow.
The first 250 of those were sold in the first 24 hours, making it the fastest-selling game its publisher, Paradox Interactive, has ever released. Yeah. The irony here doesn't escape the CEO. Only a week before Skylines was released, game publisher Electronic Arts announced that it was shutting down SimCity developer Max's studio in Emeryville, which it acquired in 1997. Quote, "I feel so bad about Max's closing down. The older SimCities were really the inspiration for us to even consider making a city builder." So at the time, she admits SimCity's mistakes were Colossal Order's opportunity. If SimCity was a huge success, which is what we expected, I don't know if Skylines would have ever happened, she said, explaining that it would have made a harder pitch to sell Paradox if the new SimCity dominated the market. City Skylines is a huge critical success as well, earning overwhelmingly positive reviews and an instantaneously devoted community. Skylines was designed to allow players to create their own content for the game, A week later, they've already created thousands of buildings and maps. One player recreated Grand Theft Auto 5's fictional city Los Santos within Skylines. And another player named Brian Shannon is making exceptionally high-quality assets, which makes sense as he used to do this professionally for Maxis. Yes, even an old Maxis employee is getting in on the fun. So Maxis was, whereas the old SimCity games embraced the complexity and minutia of urban planning, allowing players to intricately configure large city layouts and infrastructure, SimCity 2013 streamlined restricted city size and essentially forced players to play online together. Colossal Order wanted to make a more full-fledged city builder since it was founded in 2009, but the small team, 5 to start and 13 today, didn't have the means. Instead, made Cities in Motion and Cities in Motion 2. So Skylines, not surprisingly, is a great at simulating traffic, but it also allows players to build much bigger cities than in SimCity and tinker with every little detail. Zoning, budget, garbage, water, energy, police, and more. You can sit there and pull your hair out over every city block if you want, which a lot of people apparently do.
Oh, God.
So, to kind of wrap this up, it sold over 500,000 copies within its first week.
Yeah.
And the reason it did that is because it's letting people have the tiny, tiny little control that you used to be able to have in SimCity. Like, I remember my first game, I think, was SimCity, I think maybe the original, and then I got SimCity either 4 or 2000. And I really, really liked it because it may not seem like fun, but when you make a city and you set the taxes as so-and-so, you set the water lines, you do all these kind of things, and every little thing has an effect on it in a positive or negative way, it kind of made it much more interactive and involved. Lately, EA has turned the SimCity franchise into a very must-be cooperative play, must play this way, very restrictive, focus, 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 and try whenever you want. Like, you don't get these grand-scale cities like you used to. And this is where Skylines has really kind of embraced letting you do the little things that you think, oh, who wants to deal with garbage? That no one wants to play a video game to deal with the city's garbage, but they do. They really like having as much control over their little city as possible. It's kind of what made SimCity originally very, very powerful. It gave people the opportunity to really be a city planner. So they're picking up where SimCity kind of fell off, and if you were kind of thinking, I really like the SimCity franchise, but now that they're closed, where do I go from here? Check out Skylines.
Yeah. Which is basically a super version of it, with a micro detail that you say that people really, really like.
I would say it would be a super high detail, but no, it's more of going back to the basics of what made SimCity popular. It's letting people control, hey, is this going to be a 2-lane or a 4-lane road? Hey, what's the garbage collection rate going to be around here? Hey, what's the water flow rate? They get to control every little thing about a city. And people like that. People like that kind of control because, hey, if you're going to play with a virtual city, why not let them have every single control possible?
Yeah, why not?
So, but SimCity from EA really kind of cut out what they thought was the fat, and it left the game feeling very, very restrictive and hollow. So, Skylines, check it out. More than 500,000 copies, and they're still going strong. It's only been about a week, but as I said, very, very positive reviews.
I think let's get this last story in here from Maximum PC, Paul Lilly. It's entitled, Here's How Microsoft is Shrinking Windows 10's Footprint. A leaner, meaner operating system.
Let's cut that one, because that one kind of, fell into hot hardware's, how they reclaim disk space.
Okay, well
so essentially the same.
All right, then why don't I talk about this new liquid-based 3D printer that takes minutes, not hours?
Yeah, we were just talking about 3D printers earlier, so that'd be a good tie-in.
Right. There you go. Rapid prototyping may soon get a whole lot more rapid thanks to an entirely new method of 3D printing. Instead of taking hours to 3D print something, it might soon just take minutes. The UNC Chapel Hill researchers who described their new process in the Journal of Science named it CLIP for continuous liquid interface production. They argue their method confronts two of the most annoying aspects of 3D printing, waiting hours for creation and one with rough surfaces. CLIP, they claim, can print smooth, complex objects in a fraction of the time as existing systems and using a wider variety of materials. This is very cool.
Don't you hate when rapid prototyping takes hours instead of weeks? Oh, that's so annoying.
Well, now it'll be minutes rather than hours. Existing 3D printers methods that use liquid rosin-based objects layer by layer is a slow process. Printing a layer, cure it, replenish the rosin supply, repeat. In the CLIP system, a projector displays successive, imperceptibly thin cross-sections of the object form from below in ultraviolet light. This light hardens a layer of liquid just above the bottom of a pool of liquid rosin. Meanwhile, a platform continuously lifts the forming object out of the rosin. The killer feature of a CLIP printer is the bottom of the pool, a window that lets oxygen as well as ultraviolet light pass through. Because oxygen blocks the curing process, the membrane effectively and continuously forms a dead zone of non-curable rosin on the bottom. Yet the layer is only about as thin as a few red blood cells. This lets ultraviolet light pass through and cure any low oxygen rosin sitting right above the dead zone. Presto! No rosin sticks to the bottom, and printing goes faster because it's not happening at the surface where oxygen is present and slows things down. As the printer pulls up the forming object, suction feeds more low oxygen rosin toward the bottom. Drastically speeding up the curing process also makes for smoother 3D prints. Instead of waiting around for a single slice of a 3D object to cure, CLIP prints continuously, creating objects that rival injection molded parts. CLIP's makers also claim that they can produce much finer parts with features smaller than 20 microns. That's as thick as an acrylic fiber, and potentially use elastomers as well as tissue-compatible biological materials, which most 3D printers can't use. It also doesn't hurt that the CLIP process looks really cool. They were actually inspired by the T2000 iconic liquid metal T1000. Remember how it just kind of rose up from the bottom and its shape, from the liquid pool, metal pool?
Are you talking about the Terminator?
Yeah, it's been Terminator. That's what this sort of looks like. It kind of rises up out of the liquid. But at the end of the day, it's really the speed that sets this new process apart. CLIP's creators say objects can be produced 25 to 100 times faster than old school methods. The researchers are leveraging the patent-pending process into a startup called Carbon 3D Inc., which plans to produce a commercial version of a CLIP printer by the end of the year. No word yet on its costs or specifications, but we expect the first batch of Carbon 3D devices will go to startups and research institutes that have a great need for high-quality, rapid prototyping and a lot of cash sitting around. So there you go. I mean, look, it's going to start there, but eventually it'll trickle down, and consumers will get it, and things are 25 to 100 times faster than current 3D printers.
Yeah, but it's a different type of 3D printing, though.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it is, but obviously more efficient.
Yep, way more efficient, and from what I've been hearing, it's also, how do you say? Like, it's also lending to finer, detailed, things. So, like, think if you ever purchased, and I know, Craig, this is gonna be your forte, like a lot of video game companies, they'll make these action figures that are really, really finely detailed. They're, they have little pores on the skin. They're extremely intricate, and they sell them for hundreds of dollars. Like, we're talking about the serious action figures, like that look molded and sculpted by hand. It'll be able to make those kinds of details pretty much, using this method. So it'll be insanely detailed and quicker, and hopefully at the end of the day, cheaper.
Yeah.
Than how you currently make those.
Wow. I mean, we might not, we may not see 3D printing, of this type
at least for another, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but it's coming.
It is coming. Okay. All right, well, that about wraps it up. Again, I want to send out a thank you to our first hour guest, Dr. Patrick Bodish, professor and chair of the Human Computer Interaction Lab at Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany. I just like saying that. It's so long. And,
Guten Tag, Germany.
yeah, can you imagine? People ask, "What do you do for a living?" Well, I am the chairman.
Oh, you actually get a title. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, exactly. But it's such a long one, you know.
Craig, we give you a long title too. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, saying that. Well, I'm the professor and chair of the Human Computer Interaction Lab at Hasso Plattner Institute in Potsdam.
We can change the broom closet into a
90 seconds.
Human Computer Interaction Lab, and you could be the Computer America chairman of the
exactly.
Interaction
Lab. Exactly. Hey, it's the third Wednesday of the month, and it's our Intel Sponsor Hour. Intel is going to be here with us. Yes, and we're going to be talking to Wendy. She is we're talking about the Intel Educational Science
60 seconds
contest that they just recently held. It's going to be really fascinating. She's going to be joining us for the first hour. And
I wonder what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. And then in hour 2, computer and technology news. Brought to you by Slimmer Utilities, the official optimization software of Computer America. So that about wraps it up. Thank you all so much for tuning us in and listening tonight. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I think we have everything back up under control. And Ben and I will see you tomorrow night. So until tomorrow night, this is Craig Crossman hoping that your hard disk never becomes floppy. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night!
We never just get to sit and listen to the music.
Yes.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Okay, everybody, thanks again for watching us in our Google Hangouts, and Ben and I will see you tomorrow night with Intel. It's going to be an interesting hour because the first hour is going to be our first pre-recorded hour, so you'll hear us, but you won't actually see us in the first hour. And then we can be live. We'll be talking, but our mouths won't be moving to the recording. And then, of course, the second hour that will be a live show. That will be the rest of the live show. So join us in our first experiment with this, and we will see you tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
Good night.